Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Philip Tahali. I'm a professional comic book artist, and I'm going to be teaching you today how to draw the human eye. Going forward, I'm going to teach you all of the rest of the facial features, and once you've got a good grasp on those, I'm going to teach you how to combine all of them to make a full human head. So let's get started here. So before anything, we need to know exactly what parts of the eye we are drawing. So in the middle here, we have our pupil. Outside of that is the colored portion of your eye. That's called the iris. And outside of that is the white of your eye, which is called the sclera. So these are the three circles that you really need to focus on while we're drawing. So let me get rid of these little titles here. Okay, so these three circles are the basis of what you need to know to draw the human eye. But it's important you kind of have a sort of X-ray vision. So I prepared an eyeball inside of a skull, so you can see what I'm talking about here. This is how those three lines correlate with the actual eyeball in the skull. I also have a picture of a female eye, so it shows you exactly how the skin folds over the eyeball and around the skull, and how everything fits together. So as for the X-ray vision, I'm going to play with the slider here, and you can kind of see this is what we're really trying to learn how to draw. We want to be able to draw an eye, and then we want to be able to draw the eyelids and all the rest of the details around it. And that's really the basis of how we're going to start this. So let me hide all this stuff here. Okay, so there's one more diagram I want to show you guys here. It's another kind of anatomy of the eye. But this one's important because it shows that the cornea, it sticks out a little bit from the eyeball. So let me get a pencil, I'll show you what I mean. Right here, normally if I continue this circle, it goes around and reaches here. But as you can see, the cornea is sticking out just a little bit. Now this isn't going to be important right now until when we draw it, because you can kind of just draw a sphere and have it pretty accurate. But when we're doing the shading and stuff at the end, and when we're trying to figure out where the pupil sits, it's important to understand that there's actually an extra dome over that portion. But let's move on from here. Let me delete this. There's one more diagram I want to show you guys, and that's of a three-dimensional eye. Let me go ahead and grab my pencil here, show you what I'm talking about. So right here, this is the dome I'm talking about. This is the cornea. It's sticking out just a little bit more than the regular part of the eye. So normally the eye would just cruise right through here, but that's not the case. There's like a clear dome going over it, and this is what's sticking out. And what's important to know about this is that this portion is more flat. This portion back here, your whole entire iris, and the dome is on top of that. And it kind of will give the illusion that this is set back further in space. It's only going to really matter when we start getting more realistic, but I just want to let you guys know. So when you see me draw it later, you might understand what's going on here. Let me get rid of this for now. Let me hide everything. Alright, so let me bring back this picture. And we're just going to draw over it so you can get an idea of what's going on here. So you got your tear duct area. I'm just going to draw right over it so you guys can get an idea of what's going on. Now there's a three-dimensional portion to the under part of your eyelid. I'm going to draw both pieces. And I'm going to go around this way, so we can get an idea of what it is. So every time you draw a human eye, you're actually drawing all of these things. I'll even just do loosely put this eyebrow in here, and then we'll erase it so you can see what I mean. We'll draw the iris, and we'll put a little circle for the pupil here. I'll put a little under here. Okay. So underneath, every time you're doing this, this is exactly what we're drawing. You're drawing, let me change the color of this. Let me get it red. This eyelid is really curving over. It's curving over the edge underneath too. That's really going around the eyeball. You always want to kind of keep that in mind when you're doing this. Your eyebrow up here, it's kind of resting against this portion of the skull here. If you feel your face, you can feel exactly what I mean, and the bag under your eye is also kind of determined, like when you're super tired. It's kind of determined by that. But we want to keep this in mind, that this is happening. And then the skin folds back out from here and goes up the side of your eye. Same down here. This is what's happening. This is what we're going to be learning how to draw. Most people are going to just focus on this outer portion. When you're drawing a cartoon eye, so we're mostly focusing on the comic book style. But it's important to know exactly why, because it's comic book style or cartooning is kind of a shorthand version of the realistic eye. But let me go ahead and delete this. Now that we went over the basic anatomy of the eyeball and how the skin folds over it and the skull, let's bring in some spheres here, and I can show you exactly what I mean. We're going to draw over them. Alright, so let's see here. So let's take this one up here on the top. So let's pretend this is an eyeball. And the grid over it can show the three-dimensionality of it. So we know that this is kind of the center line. When you draw an eye, you want to draw a line across, and you want to envision the center cross line. Now these aren't perfectly separated to represent it, so we'll do it ourselves. The pupils should be about this big. The outer portion of the retina is almost another pupil across, so we can kind of gather that it's right about here. It's almost perfect. So this is where it starts to get important to understand the eye. So let's say you're going to do it from a different direction. We're going to pretend the nose is on this side somewhere. But we know the eye kind of starts about here, the eyelid. So we're going to draw the eyelid over it. And then we want to curve around the eyeball. And we want to do the same thing on the bottom. And we know that the eyelid is also curving around this. We can even just draw an eyeball, because we know that the skull is sitting in the skull. We know that we can just draw an eyebrow right above here. And this is what you're doing. If you want to really pay attention to it, there's an underneath eyelid, and you kind of get it obscured up here. But this is the same thing that we're going to apply on all these different angles. Because you really need to be able to draw the eye from all different angles. So you want to imagine this three-dimensional sphere every time you draw an eye. And I'll show you more about that in a second. But it's important to understand that this eyeball is underneath here. It's okay to be sketchy. You can always go back and clean things up. It's more important that you just kind of focus, because you know what, the corner of the eyelid's over here. We kind of want to curve around in three-dimensional space and draw this eyeball here. When you leave the portion open up here on the top, it gives it more of an excited look or scared look. That's more of a facial expressions thing. We can kind of show that later. But for any of these, it's going to be the same kind of idea for all of them. If you were to see this eye over here from looking downwards like it is, because it kind of looks like, from the way this sphere is, that it's going downwards and across. You know the pupil is going to be here, and the circle is about another pupil away. Let me just draw it all in. And you're going to see way more of the top eyelid because it's closer to the viewer or camera. And then underneath, you can see it from underneath too. So this is what you kind of want to envision. Every time you draw an eye, no matter what angle it's on, it's really the same formula. You're just trying to see and imagine a three-dimensional sphere underneath. What I said earlier about the kind of X-ray vision. This will help you imagine how to draw an eyeball from all different angles. And once you can do this, you can draw any eye, really. You can look at a photograph, and if you can kind of see exactly like what it is that you're trying to redraw, then you should have no problem just imagining a sphere and drawing, redrawing it from anything. But let's get rid of this. Let me get rid of it just so you can see exactly what we're looking at first. And we're going to get rid of this completely. Let's add another layer here. Alright, so let me bring in some 3D models here. And this is of a sphere, so you can kind of get another idea. Now, when you're imagining it, you probably all took this in art class in high school, or you probably learned it pretty earlier than that. You might have learned it in middle school also. But drawing a sphere is really kind of one of the most important things you can do with drawing. You can do this and kind of imagine that there's lines crossing over it. Then you can go ahead and draw the eye. Just want to add a pupil. It's about another pupil distance away. You can even draw one in if you want. I'm going to just show it and get rid of it. And you want to know that this portion here is going to be longer than this portion because this is further away from us. But you always want to imagine everything in three-dimensional space. Let's shade it in a little bit. But this is it. Like, this is, you draw the eyelid curving around it. You know it starts about here. This is kind of something you get from practice. And like, I don't like where that is. Let's bring it down a little bit because usually it's looking too excited. I can even leave it because it's kind of looking like where the eyelid would end. And do a little tear duct. You want to come around, connect it on this side, and there you go, voila. Now the important thing is, remember we said this is a flat portion and this is set back. The shines, I'm just going to like notate them here with little circles. Those matter. So let's say the light is coming from this direction, as you can see on the shading here, and that's why it's darker on this portion. The shine, that means the bigger shine would be coming from the sun up here. I usually see another little one because it's going through a three-dimensional, like we said, it's a three-dimensional dome. The light's going through the dome, and it's leaving like a shine here, and it's also kind of leaving one on the way out, and then the pupils in the middle. But that's how you know where to put the shines also. Let me hide this. And let's take an eraser too, and let's just erase part of it. So you can kind of get whatever's left here. I have it on vector, so it's erasing big chunks of it. But this is basically what you're looking at here. This is the eye. I'm going to put that back a little bit. And you know, I know that the skull, the eyeball's sitting in the skull, so I know that the eyebrow sits right about here. So understanding what you're seeing underneath also helps you measure where things are going to sit three-dimensionally. Let's go ahead and delete that. And I have another one here. I'll adjust this so we can move it around. But this is really what this is what we're imagining in space. When every time you draw a sphere and you need to put a cross across it, this is what we're trying to imagine. And you don't have to be neat with it, but as you can see here, let me grab the pencil. This is what we're trying to draw over a sphere. One little X. You can draw a million little circles. I know this one's kind of right about, you can kind of put a dot where you need to start it, and then you can curve around it. And you can go around it. Just like this. And I've had a lot of practice, so obviously it's easier for me to do it. I don't really need a kind of like 3D model reference. I can see it in my mind. If I wanted to look down here, I can do the same thing. I can imagine this line curving around a ball. You can also draw a line around a ball, and you know you're going to get it right. You know? So let me show you what I mean. So I drew that one up there, but I already know that that's right because I've drawn these so many times. I can go ahead and turn this eyeball and match it up with it, and I know that I'm pretty much got it accurate. It's pretty much exact. It's a little bit on a different angle, but you get the idea. You can still see exactly what it is you're supposed to be drawing. And you can just practice these. Just sit around drawing circles, sketch them out, throw a dot somewhere, and then try to figure out where the rest of it goes. Draw a line going around from that circle. Draw another line coming around from here. Draw another line on the side. Get your pupil size. Get your iris size. And boom, there you go. You got another eye. Now your eyelid, it doesn't start at the very corner of it, but the eyelid corner starts right over here. You can come around. And you might not be realizing, but I'm imagining that there's a nose here, bridge of a nose. And I know that there's going to be another eye here. And eyes are always on the same angles, so that I know that there will be another one like this, another pupil, etc. We put eyebrows on both sides. That's really what we're thinking about when we're drawing these. So let me hide this. I have another one of an eye. Okay, and you want to imagine this as another one. This shows you really more of what's going on here. It's a 3D model of an eye, and you can also see the sclera. You can see the cornea sticking out right there, showing that it's not really a perfect circle, but you can see how the lenses are in the eye, the iris, how the pupil is set back further than you think it would be. So understanding this is going to give you more realistic eyes. Just like we were showing before on the sphere, this is what we're replicating every time you draw one. You want to look at the eye and you want to kind of imagine it this way. You can start with the pupil, you can even work out from there, you can work from the outer portion of the eye and inwards. But when you're drawing an eye, you always want to kind of envision that this is what you're doing. There's multiple different ways to do it. That's why I went out of my way to show you guys the anatomy and everything else, so that you can be better at drawing eyes. Anyhow, let's move on. Okay, so let's go back to what we had in the beginning, which is these 3 circles. And I'm going to bring in the pupil size so you can see what I mean. So this is what I was originally referring to. Let's get the pencil. So you want to draw this first circle, and then when you need to get to the second one, you can think about it as 2 pupils across. And now this outer portion, the sclera, is a little bit bigger, so we can just say 1, 2, and it's like 1 2/3, but you can say 1.5. It doesn't have to be exact unless you're really getting scientific, because it's just a little bit over from the edge. This is where you know where to make each circle. Let me delete this and hide the sizes. I'll go back in here. So now, when we're looking at this, we know that we need to draw the outer eyelid. And then we need to draw the lower eye. Let's say that the tear ducts are here. That means the nose is on this side. I'll just make a little note here. And then this other eyelid is coming across the bottom on this side. And we know the eyelid is wrapping around here. The little lines under here to notate that. Let me make this a little bit lighter, actually. Alright, you can draw in the iris. You can draw in the pupil. And that's generally it. We know that the eye socket is around here. We can draw in an eyebrow. Eyebrows is really something we can get more into when we get to faces. But just to be aware of it and where it is. This part shaded in. Depending on where the light's coming from, we could say the light's coming from, let's say the same area, sun over here, or some kind of light in the house. Boom, it's shooting a light here. You know it's going to come off the sphere. You have a little one down here. Now the eyelid itself is thick. You can't see it from this angle, but you would definitely be able to see the under eyelid. And we can darken this in so you can kind of see that this is the darker portion. But if you look at your own eye, the shine will be here, but it casts a shadow through here. So in a lot of comic books and things, you'll see it completely dark on this side, less dark on this side. Could use a darker pencil, but that's fine. Just so you get the idea. And down through here. And boom, so now you know where that shade is. There's actually a little bit of shade that you can see from the eyelid if you really want to get it right. And there you go. So let me put I'll put a white layer on it so it can be even lighter. I'm going to draw over it. So this is just kind of like the pencil stage. Now generally, when I draw comics, I'll take a G pen or an equivalent of a G pen. You would take your sketch and then you'd go over it later. So in comic books, you don't want to draw every single line, but you kind of want to draw the most important ones. This crosses over here. You know that. You know the tear ducts here. And then you want to draw this under eyelid. And if you want, you can draw the little eyelid underneath. We know this is the bottom side of the eyelid, so there's casting a shadow under here. So let's put a little shadow here. And ink in this little iris and pupil. And if we're going to do kind of more of like a cartoony thing, we can just make this all black. You want to be cognizant of these shines. Sometimes you do a little slanted shine. I want to color it in just a thick pencil. Actually, let's do thick ink so you really get an idea of what we're looking at. Now generally just fill it in and get an idea of what I'm talking about. And boom, we got an eye. Now you can get in here and you can shade it. Let me bring this back down to 20. You know that there's little lines coming towards the center of the eye. You can go crazy with detail if you want it, however realistic you want to get. For a comic book, it doesn't have to be that realistic. You also want to put it back in those eyelids. Now you can go crazy with it. You can add more little details. You can add eyelashes if you want. Think about how they look at yourself in the mirror and kind of see. There's usually less smaller ones on the bottom. But generally, that's all there is to it. So every time you see me draw an eye, in my mind, I'm actually thinking about a three-dimensional sphere underneath and everything wrapping around it. And kind of that's what it is. That's how you draw an eye. So I hope you guys learned a lot here. And I'm not sure what we'll do next. Maybe we'll do nose, and then lips, ears. Then we can do facial construction and head construction. And then you'll be able to draw entire faces. And we can even do cartoon styles. So let me touch on that real quick actually before we end this. So let me hide this. Let me hide the original layers. And I got some. So here's some anime eyes. I wanted to be able to show some of these too. So you can see here, if you're looking at the construction of it, same thing, eyelid, pupil, iris, there's a shine here. And it's kind of just like an exaggerated form of the exact same thing. If you wanted to, let me take a pencil. I'll make it red. You could kind of make it out. Like this is a more oval, but it's still the same thing. It's still about, look, it's about another pupil away to the next pupil. And you could say, okay, well that's 1.5. It's an oval, it's not really a circle, but you could draw the eyeball in here. It's the same thing. It's just a stylized version of it. And you put your eyelid wrapping around the eye. It's just a big oval shaped eye. You could go back over here too and really try to make it realistic. But you can see here it's the same thing, same formula. But you can always play with it, like here. You don't really see a retina, it's just a completely blacked out kind, which you saw in a lot of classic cartoons. Let me show you, I got some of those here. You got your Simpsons kind of eyes here. Fred Moore. Takahito Kimura. Bruce Timm. He's famous for like Batman. But you can see exactly what's going on here. They're all a mixture of the same idea. You want to know your pupil. You can exaggerate and make the iris really big, but you still want to wrap the eyes around in three-dimensional space. You have the pupil set back here, smaller and bigger on this side. So you can see they're thinking about, even in like an exaggerated anime style, they're still thinking about that dome. Not so much here in the Simpsons eye. It's really just but it's like a complete eyeball, and you can still see the three-dimensional nature of it rather. So let me see. You can tell that both eyes are looking the exact same direction. It's not like you don't guess when you put the pupils in. You're thinking about how these eyes are sitting in three-dimensional space, and then you know they're always going to be going the same direction. Dot eyes, less so. They're just kind of like markers for where eyes should be. Disney eyes are a little bit more realistic, but they'll squash and stretch. I mean, like, they'll make the eyes a little bit bigger this way. They try to make them more dramatic, make them a little wider. They really exaggerate expressions, and they're cognizant of lines going through to kind of make it look really smooth. Like, eyebrows don't really react like that, but if you exaggerate it the right way, it's even more expressive. But we'll get into expressions when we get further into this. But I think that's pretty much it. So depending on whatever style it is you're trying to do, as long as you look at the basics I taught you here, you should be able to draw any kind of eye. It's important to understand the eye, then rather just like, I just need to draw these lines here and there. It's not about that. It's about understanding what you're seeing and then applying that knowledge on a two-dimensional plane. I hope you guys learned a lot. I'll see you next time. Bye.